Alrighty, hey now, are you having trouble sleeping at night these days? Do you find yourself just a teensy-weensy little bit anxious? Are you having concerns about funny-looking men with bad haircuts in North Korea? Are you having concerns about funny-looking old white men with even worse toupees in the United States? Are you concerned that all this work you've been doing to pay off your student loan and or keep up with your mortgage has been for naught, when you could have been instead spending this money on your big last woohoo cruise around the world, before we fall off the flat edge of it? Are you finding yourself stress eating for 4 people, like into 3 other pant sizes and maybe a whole other zip code if this keeps up? If the answer to any of these things is yes, then you're in very good company, because I have been going through the same thing. So we're going to make this the quick and dirty survival guide for the eclipse as we are dealing with it, and some pointers to kind of keep perspective on what exactly we are up against. So in case you haven't noticed, we have already felt the first eclipse, which was at the beginning of the month in Leo, and boy, what a doozy that has been, right? And now, of course, we've got the mega eclipse at the end of the month at 28 Leo, which, between the news making us feel like any day now we could end up in World War III, and and astrology, which kind of gets us all, worked up, because we're guessing at this point. We kind of know what these things mean, but we don't really know how they'll play out, so it just builds our anxiety even more. And geez Louise, like, how much more food can I possibly eat? I'm going to explode, right? Okay. So here's what I would like you to understand. We need to put these things in perspective. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this eclipse and we're going to look at what these eclipse patterns mean in the broad sense, right? So we can put it in perspective, what its job is. And then we're going to turn the microscope around, or the telescope around, and we're going to bring this back to us individually, personally. Like, what is this about for us personally, and how do we make this work for us so that we can actually get some rest at night and keep our sanity? So the first thing you got to understand with eclipses affect masses of people, nations, civilizations, cultures, entire groups of people. Eclipses affect, because eclipses are about mass consciousness. So right now, one of the things that may be hard to see is that we are in such an exciting time. And it's not just the US. Everybody else across the globe has been getting hit with these terms. We're all in the process, as a human race, in the process of turning the ship in this giant ocean of consciousness. And anybody who's ever tried to steer a boat or a ship out in the water can tell you it's not a fast, quick turn. These things take time, and that turning process doesn't look like you're actually getting anywhere, but you're getting somewhere, and the slightest shift will send you off in a completely different trajectory. So it may not look like much while we're doing it, but the shift and the turn that we are doing with this ship of human cargo on this planet, that is a huge, huge thing. So we are in it to win it, honey. In it to win it. Okay, so the other thing, so the eclipses are all about mass consciousness, and there are demands for evolution that are hidden inside these eclipses. It's up to us to read the map. With that said, those evolutionary demands are not just for all of us as a group, it's also for us individually, okay? And when we understand what those things are, it is easier to ride this energy and surf it like a wave, as opposed to getting caught up in it and taken under helplessly, and feeling like we are at the mercy and victim of circumstances. So the eclipse in Leo, on a large scale, has a lot to do with the exact same thing that it's asking of us on an individual level. And what the eclipse is telling us, demanding of us, requiring that we do, is it is requiring that we find our joy. Now, I know you're listening to this and you're like, well, what on earth is that supposed to mean? Okay, so let's think about this for a second. So the sign Leo We know rules, children, right? Creativity. Sorry, my pen's a little thick. Games. Okay. So these three things alone, Leo rules, right? So what do these things have in common? Children are the expression of pure joy, right? Creativity is also the expression of pure joy. When we express ourselves creatively, we can't help but come from a joyous place. When you're singing, you're sharing your joy with other people, and you're inviting them to join you in it. You know, when we act or create art, none of these things necessarily have practical value, but they are an expression of our joy, okay? And even the games that we play, this has everything to do with the experience and expression of joy, okay? So this Leo eclipse is, seriously, it is about finding, reclaiming and finding our joy. So the distinction that's important here is that joy is not the same thing as pleasure. They're related but not the same thing. So when we experience pleasure, we say, oh, that feels really good. I really like that. But we are not compelled to share that with other people. Pleasure is a very selfish thing, okay? And being selfish is not a bad thing, but it is still a selfish thing. We don't feel compelled to share our pleasure with other people. A lot of times when we're having pleasure with something, and it's a selfish pleasure, we want to do the exact opposite. We don't want to share it at all. Joy, on the other hand, is this dynamic, overwhelming experience that we can't contain inside ourselves. We must share our joy. We can't help it. We are compelled to do it. So when you hear your favorite song come on and you can't help yourself and you start singing along to it out loud, you are not only expressing your joy, but you are sharing it with other people. You know, children are pure joy. Everything that they do, everything they experience, everything that is part of their growing and living is an expression of joy, you know, at just having this experience, you know, even when they're screaming in bloody murder. And what do children do? They want to share that with you. They want to share their joy with you. They can't help themselves, right? And even creative expression, art, music, dance, all of these things, when you're filled with joy, you want to express that and share it with other people because that magnifies the joy that we are experiencing. So this Leo eclipse is literally about finding and reclaiming and embracing our joy. And the reason this is important is because joy is the thing that will keep our sanity and will sustain us in the worst of times and the darkest of nights. It is having one tiny source of joy that will keep your spirit alive and able to withstand the worst of storms. The other part of joy is that when you are in your joy, when you're experiencing your joy, when you're sharing your joy with other people, you're also inviting them to elevate up to that experience with you. It's contagious. You know, when you are singing your heart out off key as the day is long, but you are loving what you're doing, you are loving that song, even though you may not necessarily sound so awesome, people still can't help but enjoy it with you. They're experiencing and sharing your joy with you because that's what joy does. Joy is the most healing experience we can possibly share with other people. So when we experience our joy and we share it and we give it to other people, it ignites them and sparks their joy as well, which starts a healing process in them. So this Leo eclipse is about the expression of joy, reclaiming it, finding it, owning it, and sharing it, embracing it. So I want you to think about this for a second. So when you don't have joy in your life, what does that make you? What happens when a person doesn't have any joy in their life? People who don't have joy in their life are small, they're mean, or they're petty, or some combination of the above. You will never see somebody who is in their joy that will be small, mean, and petty at the same time. It's impossible. So the people who have the least amount of joy often have the most amount of meanness and smallness and pettiness. So this isn't to say that we should judge them for that, but it is to say that they're definitely having a deficit. And you know what? We can help fill that deficit. We can help heal some of that by sharing some of our joy with them. That's how we elevate the people around us. And this is what this eclipse is requiring of us in an evolutionary sense. Okay, so that's some food for thought. That's the secret message in the eclipse pattern. Remember, it's not about pleasure. Pleasure can be very selfish. It's about joy. Find the thing that brings you joy. Okay, now looking at the eclipse pattern, there's some promising things here that are giving us hope that the world will not come to an end. So let's start with the big one, right? Okay, so the first thing is this eclipse is part of a grand trine, right? Now, a grand trine is a very protective aspect. It makes things easier. Makes things a lot easier. There's a lot of luck and protection involved in grand trines. So this grand trine involving the eclipse means that this eclipse, the functions and manifestations of the eclipse are very much going to go unchallenged, and they won't and should not be difficult to deal with. Now, this eclipse is going to involve Uranus and Saturn, okay? So the eclipse involves, and it's particularly Uranus, because it's right there at the same degree of the sun and the moon. So Uranus with the new moon eclipse, Uranus has everything to do with shock value and overturning the status quo and breaking down rigid restrictions and old rules that are just not working anymore. But it also has to do with progress and moving things forward and getting out of our own way by force if necessary. And it can often feel shocking because Uranus is so far ahead in terms of their vision. They're having not future shock, but present shock. So the sign of Uranus is very much about visionary, ahead of their time sort of thinking. So they're living in the potential future that could be. And they're very impatient to get there. So they move so fast, it can feel very shocking and jarring when that Uranus energy kicks in, because it wants everything to happen right now, like yesterday. You know, enough already, enough of the past. Let's go, 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 go. So with the new moon eclipse and this Uranus together at these same degrees, that's going to be the most pronounced feeling of all, is this like a wake-up call or a shock to the system, that thing that snaps you out of your comfortable lethargy, you know, and foggy brain sort of like not thinking thing, and really you become really hyper alert and hyper aware, and you're processing things a lot faster. And the truth, the absolute unvarnished, sometimes unpleasant, but hard to deny truth becomes evidently clear. And it's not truth for us individually or personally or whatever suits our personal agendas. It's truth on a very humanitarian, universal, principled way. So it's not the truth we want to hear, and it's not the convenient truth. It is the essential truth that moves us forward in our evolution. This is what's part of this grand trine with the eclipse. We also have Saturn involved with this eclipse. Oh, come back here. Saturn involved with this eclipse, and Saturn, of course, has to do with structures and foundations and boundaries and the rules that we live by. So this new moon eclipse with Saturn is going to help, okay, ease the transition into a revision of the rules. Uranus is the reformer, and Saturn is the taskmaster, but this grand trine will allow us to kind of ease into new ways of doing things without necessarily having to upend the entire apple cart. Saturn and Uranus working together as part of this grand trine with the eclipse also means that we will be able to make changes that Uranus wants to move us ahead towards our future that are sustainable, because Saturn wants things that are going to last. So we're going to be very active in creating a paradigm shift that is sustainable in terms of what's really going to help us all move forward in our evolution. And our personal lives, what this could also be felt as are the same things, like kind of examining the rules that we've been living by in our life and how we've been denying ourselves the opportunity for joy and more of it, okay? And how we can create and craft a completely different future for ourselves. You know, how can we change our perception so that it's broader and there's more vision involved in what we see as possible for ourselves? Okay, because it's not about having a comfortable place to curl up and spend the next 30 years dying. You know, it's very much about recreating the rules in a way that's progressive, okay, that helps us get to our joy. All right? Joy is a powerful thing, and if you think about it, there's a lot of people out there that haven't been in touch with their joy in a long time, and that by itself is a very heartbreaking thing. Okay? Now, some interesting things about this particular eclipse pattern I want you guys to pay attention to. Almost all the planets in here are retrograde. Okay? The only planets that are not retrograde in this chart are Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. We don't count the sun and the moon because they never go retrograde, right? So all of our outer planets, okay, are retrograde. And the one planet that has to do with perception and thought processes and getting it right, it's also retrograde. The only ones that are not retrograde are Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. So when we look at this, you know, the question becomes, well, okay, that's nice, but what on earth do we do with that information, right? Well, here's the thing. When we look at this, one of the things that this tells us is what can we do? How can we work with this in a way that's going to make things easier for ourselves, right? So all of these planets, especially the outer planets, being retrograde, anytime a planet is retrograde, it has to do with turning within, tuning out, turning in, and turning on. I think that's what the way the quote went from the 70s, or the 60s. So it's very much about going deeper, going within, going deeper, and getting to the root of things, really examining things from a deeper perspective than the superficial presentations on the top. Okay, and that's why retrogrades are typically very difficult for people, because we like moving forward. We don't like having to go back and digging through our closets and our drawers. We've been there. We know it's in there. We don't want to have to dig it up again. But these are necessary things. The outer planets all have to do with mass consciousness and our principles and all of our high-minded, big idea stuff. The one personal planet that is retrograde is Mercury, and Mercury retrograde always gives us an opportunity to reevaluate, reconsider. How can we go back and check for flaws and hiccups in the system and do it better this time? How can we make this right? So your Mercury retrograde here gives us an awesome opportunity to check the, design for flaws, you know, and shore up the system so that we can make it better, more efficient. Lovely Virgo word, efficient. Okay, but now let's get back to this Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, right? So what do we do with this? Okay, so I've got Venus, Mars, and Jupiter all direct, but what does that mean? So one of the things that we can do that will make this a lot easier is we can incorporate things that are very specific to these three planets more actively in our lives, and that will help make this transition a lot easier, because this eclipse is going to be in effect for months. So anything we can do to make it an easier, smoother transition is a beautiful thing. So Venus, of course, rules relationships, and it rules beauty, and it rules art, and it rules civility, and it rules social graces, and it rules all the things that make life nicer and beautiful and easier to deal with, right? So when we think of Venus, we think of the things that make life nice, okay? So getting involved in anything that's going to make life nicer for ourselves and the people around us, okay, is something that's very favorable at this time and will help smooth out the rough edges of this stuff that we're going to be dealing with while we're going through this, okay? Mars rules the physical body, specifically the muscles, okay, and it rules activity. So getting involved in things that will allow us to have physical activity, some type of physical intercourse with other people, is very highly favored. Getting out and moving those muscles, moving, engaging, these are the things that will help keep our sanity and help move this energy in a way that's non-destructive, okay? And then, of course, we have Jupiter, and Jupiter rules, among the many other things that Jupiter rules. Jupiter rules community, it rules social interchange, it rules pleasure. There's that word again. And it also rules broadening our horizons and opening up our vistas and foreigners and things at a distance and expanding ourselves. So Jupiterian activities, expanding our minds, expanding our horizons, expanding our social contacts, expanding our cultural experiences. All of these things are Jupiter ruled and highly favored in this particular eclipse pattern. So we are looking at art and beauty and civility, things that make life nice, right? We're looking for physical activity. We've got to get out and do something. Do something. And also, we're looking for community. We want to get out and expand our horizons. These are the key words that we want to incorporate more of in our life as we are searching for our joy, okay? So now you might be looking at this and thinking to yourself, well, okay, well, that's all nice using those words, but I'm not completely sure where you're going with this. So some examples, okay, of incorporating this in your life. So things that allow us to have more art or beauty or civility, social graces, things like that. It typically involves making ourselves either more attractive or charming, or putting ourselves in positions where we can engage in the social graces and niceties with other people. Mars, of course, is physical activity. So anything that gets us physically moving is a good thing. So you might find that a book club, you know, where you guys go for walks after your book club would be good. Not everybody's an athlete, so I'm not necessarily saying we should all go out and play rugby. And I'm not sure that rugby actually makes you more attractive after you've lost all your teeth and walked away with your arm in bandages. But, you know, for some people, that's an aesthetic. But the engagement, some kind of engagement, friendly engagement with other people is very important. And it should be something that allows or involves physical movement, right? So going to the dog park and hanging out with other dog owners, going to a book club or a walking club or something like that, anything like that, is going to help immensely. And it will, of course, naturally, because you're moving around, make you more attractive because you're going to be healthier. And Jupiter, of course, is asking us to find community and to expand our horizons. So when we look at Jupiterian activities, if we're going to make ourselves more charming or attractive to other people, and we're going to be more physically active, we could go to the gym by ourselves and accomplish the Venus and Mars energy. But it would be better if we did that in some way that allowed us to engage with other people at the gym. So maybe getting involved in a group, or like either a group class, or getting involved in some type of event that allows you to train and interact with other people and develop a sense of community that way. Things that allow you to get out of your normal comfort zones and broaden your horizons with other people is the way to go with these energies. So you know your life best, and you'll find that if you really open up to this, the universe will respond by bringing you some outstanding opportunities that you may not have even imagined yet to do exactly those things. So if those opportunities come up, go with it, see where it takes you. You know, you don't necessarily have to have huge expectations that this is going to be everything that you wanted it to be in life, but it's a stepping stone. It's a step in the right direction. It's a use of the energy that will take you somewhere else. So it's like a current in the river. You just kind of gotta go with it, and it'll take you places you weren't even sure existed. They're not always bad. A lot of times they're really, really good. Okay, now some other information about this chart that's interesting that should be kept in mind and these are background players at this point. So one of the brilliant things that's going on in this chart is we have a grand cross. Now, the grand cross is made up of this Venus-Pluto opposition, okay, and this Jupiter-Uranus opposition, okay. Now, these two oppositions all connect by a square aspect between them. Now, this may or may not mean anything to you, so we're going to kind of get into this real quick, okay? So anytime you see a square aspect, that is a 90-degree aspect. And a square aspect always, 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 always means action. Whenever you see a square, it means there's got to be action. So the thing about a square is that it needs to do something, right? And a grand cross, these four squares together, what that really means is committed action. So unlike a square, which is action for action's sake, I mean, you get a square, it's going to move. It's got to move. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's committed action. It's just doing things to do things, okay? Let's see. Sorry, I'm being a little anal here. But a grand cross is committed action. So at this time, with this energy and this ecliptic pattern, one of the things that's being required of us is that we do something. We're not allowed to pay lip service. We have to make committed action in response to whatever it is that we're being asked to deal with. So you're not allowed to, for example, turn the other cheek if really, when it comes right down to it, you're turning the other cheek is just you trying to avoid confrontation. That's not committed action. That's committed cowardice. And Leo is not the sign of a coward. Leo is the sign of chivalry and nobility and rising above this stuff, being the bigger person, being the better person. And you don't get to be that if you're operating from a place of cowardice. So you don't get to pay lip service if really you're just doing it to avoid confrontation. Okay. Now, this is not to say that we should all go head first into like a mosh pit, like a bunch of, punk rockers or whatever they were. There are certainly easier ways to get through this. But at the end of the day, what we are being required to do with this eclipse and this energy is to make committed action. We are not allowed to pay ourselves lip service or pay lip service to the people around us, about our principles and our desires and, we're going to do this one. No. You got to do something, and you've got to do it like you mean it. Okay. So you've got to put the full weight of your entire self behind your decisions and do something. So when we take committed action, okay, and we respond with a commitment to do something in response to something, we are blessed and favored, and we are acting in accordance with the evolutionary demand. Obviously, we would prefer that these committed actions be constructive actions, but remember, it must be a committed action nonetheless. You don't get to sit on the sidelines this time. Everybody's got to take a stand, pick a side, and do something. You can do these things constructively or you can do these things destructively, but you have to do something. So there you go. All right. Now, with the sign Leo, again, remember, right now, the big secret evolutionary requirement in this eclipse is for us to find our joy and embrace it, because that is what's going to propel us forward, okay? The other thing is that we are being required to identify and adopt and express those leonine qualities. And those leonine qualities are being worthy of the crown, being the bigger person, rising above pettiness and vindictiveness and shallowness and all that common pedestrian, small person, small mind stuff. Leo is the sign of noblesse oblige, the noble obligation. Those who have should do for those who can't or have to do without. Leo is the sign of royalty. It is the sign that is about being larger than life, being greater than. Remember, in the sign Leo, the fixed star Regalis, which is the sign, or not the sign, it's the star, it's the fixed star of kings. And it's also the fixed star that indicates being significantly elevated above one's original station in life. Elevate, to rise above. It's located nowhere else but the sign Leo. That's what we are all being asked to do. Rise up, be the bigger person, be the better person, be worthy of the crown of our divinity, and take committed action when you do it. Preferably constructive action, but committed action nonetheless. Okay? And some little things you should probably know, just as a general thing. So the new moon is conjunct Alphard, not Regalis. So the fixed star Alphard has a lot to do with unbridled passion. It's a very passionate, hot-headed fixed star, which can get itself into a whole lot of trouble because it's passionate and hot-headed to extreme degrees. The other side of this, because passion is necessary and passion makes us feel alive and vital. Don't discount passion. It's a beautiful thing. It is the thing that moves us and gets our big soft butts out of bed. And when you are in love and feeling passion again, oh my God, you're on fire, right? Passion's an amazing thing. But passion, like any fire, when out of control and not curbed and contained and managed and harnessed, can be very dangerous because it doesn't know when to quit. This fixed star Alphard also has to do with understanding human nature and art and creativity. So taking that passion and lending itself to creative pursuits, things that we can get passionate about that bring us joy. Ah, there, you see it? Those are the things that are going to unlock the magic in this eclipse pattern. The other is that Merak and Ras Elisad Australis are also conjunct Mars, which is very close to this eclipse. So Mars is giving this eclipse a lot of energy because Mars and the Sun are like the soldier and the general. They work well together, sometimes too well. And Merak and Ras Elisad Australis, the fixed stars, again, hot-headed, fiery, rammy kind of energy that can be very hard contained. In this particular case, this is why we need physical activity in our lives right now. We need to go out and physically do something with its energy and bury it somewhere. So community gardening is good. Weightlifting, if you're into weightlifting, just go easy if you haven't done it in a while. Building things, refinishing old, like literally refurbing and refinishing old pieces of furniture and stuff. Anything that's physically exertive that will allow you to put this energy and require some real muscle and grit and committed action to get the job done, that will use up this Mars energy and put it to tremendously good use. You're going to be absolutely blown away by the stuff you're going to accomplish, both in terms of skill and creativity, if you use this energy in that way. Now, if you don't, of course, what you're going to have is the loudmouth, obnoxious barroom drunk that wants to fight everybody because they disagreed with him. That would be the destructive expression of these energies. So let's try to put it somewhere good that will yield us applause and congratulations and admiration from other people. And we do that by taking committed action to physically exertive activities that will allow us to be creative and find our joy. So creative projects are highly favored right now, especially creative projects that allow us to kind of get in and share with people around us. Because remember, joy is about the stuff we can't help but share with other people. So that's the kind of energy we are dealing with right now with this eclipse, and there are positive ways to use this. Now, you might be listening to all this going, oh, okay, well, that's all very nice and well, but so, you know, I don't see how that's so urgently critical. Like, what is the big payoff here, right? Well, here's the big payoff. When you use these energies and you ride that wave instead of allowing it to kind of swallow you up and bounce you around like a little ragdoll in the middle of the ocean, one of the things that happens is you align yourself with the energy, and that's when the magic happens. Because when you align yourself with this powerful ecliptic energy, you become magnetic. And when you become magnetic, you become charismatic, and you become charming and attractive, and you will start pulling into yourself all the things and people that you need, or maybe you didn't know you needed. A lot easier than if you didn't. Okay, so if there are things in your life right now that you'd really like to get some assistance with, or you'd really like to have some of those gaps in your life filled, okay, so some of those empty holes filled with something nice and substantive, like intimacy, friendship, a social life, some type of creative passion, inspiration, you know, it will be easier to draw those things to you and have them magically and almost miraculously pop up and appear for you before you've even known to ask for it, if we get aligned with these energies. So, committed action. You don't get to sit on the fence this time. Nobody does. We've got to pick a side, take a side, and we've got to make a stand. We've got to do something. We don't get to talk about it anymore. And if we're going to do something, make it constructive action, not destructive action. Okay, this Leo sign eclipse is very much about finding our joy. Find your joy. Learn to recognize the difference between pleasure and joy, and find your joy. Find the thing that you're passionate about that gives you so much joy you can't help but share it with the people around you. That's the secret to making this eclipse work for you and getting in alignment with it. That's the evolutionary demand. There's a lot of power in joy. It's a divine expression. There's more to it than I can get into here, but just trust me with that and meditate on it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Think about the people who don't have joy in our lives, and that'll tell you everything about how important this is to us and our development. Okay? And also remember that Leo is about nobility and rising above being petty and small and mean. It's about being bigger than and better than. It's about being a champion of the weak and the vulnerable. Because Leo always champions the weak and the vulnerable. Okay, the lion doesn't go after weak prey. So, that, my lovies, is your hopefully helpful analysis of this eclipse pattern and this little cosmic wormhole we are entering right now. So don't let the news get to you. Don't get too wound up about the vague astrological predictions, because we're all kind of guessing here how this is all going to play out. And for astrologers who make their living making predictions, it's very important that they get things right. So you got to come in a little slack. They don't want to get too invested in a specific thing too literally, because one little detail could be off and somebody's going to be quick to call them on it as if that were the whole everything why they're wrong. But in any event, at the end of the day, leaders and nations, all of these things are all fine and well and good, but we still have to live our day-to-day lives. And it's going to be a lot easier to do that if we're getting some sleep. And able to get out of bed in the morning without being wildly depressed or overridden with anxiety. So find your joy. I want you to concentrate on what the word joy means to you in both theory and definition and practice and action, and I want you to cultivate that. Make that your mission, and you will be amazed at how much this heals and improves not just yourself and your own life and your life conditions, but everyone you come in contact with. That's the secret inside this ecliptic pattern. Use it or be used by it. Now go find your joy. Download transmission completed.